Alright, this video I want to just share my personal experiences with driving a BMW 6 Series and, you know, how it's like, what I recommend based on my experiences. There's a lot of people out there that know a lot about cars, and I'm just starting to get into it. I don't know that much, but I think it's helpful just to let people know at least what I know. And, so then if they decide to buy a car, just to be better informed. And also, just kind of break up the monotony of like talking about the same stuff in martial arts all the time. It's just completely something different. It's not about martial arts. This video is about cars. Um, so BMW is the first luxury car that I ever drove and ever owned in my life. Growing up, you know, uh, with my father has only owned like non-luxury cars, like some American cars and just like some Japanese cars like Toyotas and stuff. So BMW is the only one that I've actually test drove and then owned. Um, as far as the models that I like in BMW, now that I know more about it, I didn't know it at the time that I bought the car, but my favorite model is the 6 Series. So BMW has the most popular ones are the 3 Series, 5 Series, 6 Series, and 7 Series. Now they even have something like 4 Series, and I think they even have a 1 Series, and even stuff like that. So, but the 6 Series is like it's a combination between luxury and sports. The 3 Series is just like a sedan, small compact car. Is like one of the most affordable ones. The 7 Series is like the flagship of their brand. It's mainly just luxury. It's not so much sporty. It's just mainly luxury. Number 5, the 5 Series is just kind of a step above the 3 Series. Just a little bit bigger, a little more room, but it's still not sporty. It's still just like a regular sedan. The 6 Series is usually just 2-door coupe. The newer versions might have 4 doors, but it still retains more of a sportier look, and you won't really find them that often out in the streets. And it's it's the most expensive one is the 6 Series and 7 Series. The most affordable one is the 3 Series, and then they have the M Series, where they have the M3, then they have like the M5, the M6. The M Series is just separating, showing like it's sportier. It has more of a powerful engine. So if you have a 6 Series, you can have a regular one, but if you get the M6, it's just more horsepower. It costs a lot more money, but you get more horsepower. So you get a 3 Series, and then the 3 Series, the M3 will have more horsepower. And every series, like the 3 Series, will have like a 325, 328, 335. The higher the number is, the more horsepower that car has. So if you have a 328 compared to, or you have 325 compared to 328, the 328 has more horsepower. And then after that, the 335 has more horsepower than 328. And then the next level above the 335 would be the M3, which has more horsepower than the 335. Okay, so I had the 6 Series and had owned it for about a year and a half, not even 2 years. And when I drove the car, it was such a great experience. It was so smooth. It was like amazingly smooth and very fast at the same time, very responsive. And when you turn, you could just feel the car very much contacted to the road, and it just glides. Once you drive a 6 Series, a BMW, it's kind of hard to drive any other car because every other car just feels inadequate. Like it's just, the braking sucks in the other cars. There's no acceleration. When you turn, it just doesn't feel right, and it's just you could totally just tell a difference. And then you kind of get attached to that, like how great the car drives, and you don't want to go back to any other car that's subpar, and I even test drove a few Mercedes Benz, and it just didn't compare to the BMWs, especially the 6 Series. We we also drive a 3 Series. We got a 335 that we drive, and the 6 Series it drives much better. It's just smoother, it's faster, it's just more luxurious, and that was my favorite car, the 6 Series at the time. But there are problems associated with it, and this isn't just BMW, but mostly all German cars. So BMW and Mercedes would be the main ones where there's issues with maintenance. Like it's just a very high cost when it comes to fixing cars. So when you're talking about cars, like American cars like Ford and Chevy, and some Japanese cars like Honda, they're much easier to fix. Mechanics like those cars a lot because they're easy to fix and it's not going to cost you that much money. But when it comes to those German cars like the BMWs and Mercedes, it costs a lot of money to fix because a lot of these mechanics honestly don't know how to fix them. And even if they do know how to fix it, there's just so much labor involved because the way that they build the engines is very specific, and it's almost like these car makers pretty much design the car for only like specific people that are specially trained in knowing how to fix those cars, are capable of fixing them. So they pretty much built the cars to make it so then you have to take it to the dealer to fix it. And if you take it to somebody else, then the car could end up be getting worse, or you just end up paying for something where they don't even fix it. They don't fix it right. And that's one of the major issues. And the parts cost more as well, but the main thing is the labor. Like if they have a BMW, something simple to fix in like a regular car like a Honda or a Toyota, that's what a lot of mechanics like as well, like Hondas and Toyotas, easy to fix. So it might take, hypothetically, maybe an hour to fix it in a Honda, but in a BMW it might take 5 hours, and then you're paying all that extra money for the labor. It's not even adding value to your car. So if a Honda, it might cost you $300 to fix something, but then in a BMW to fix the same problem might cost $1,500. Significantly more. And that's one of the main issues with these German cars, specifically the BMWs and the Mercedes. So, but when you drive a BMW, especially something like the 6 Series, it's really hard to let go of that driving experience compared to like a Toyota or a Honda. They just don't drive the same. And BMW's slogan is like the ultimate driving machine, and that's what they're known for. And really, I think they live up to that standard. But you're obviously paying for it. I have confidence in stating that if you buy a brand new BMW, it'll last you a good 5 years without giving you problems. Maybe, but once you start getting up to the 10-year mark, I think that you're going to have a lot of problems. And, it'll last you a good 60,000, maybe 80,000 miles without giving you problems. But once you start getting over 80,000 miles, approaching 100,000 miles, especially when it comes to the 6 Series, and I would even say the 7 Series, is going to give you some major problems. So these cars are pretty much designed for people that have a lot of money, of course, and they typically lease the cars, so they might only lease the car for 5 years, and then they'll, upgrade to the new version 5 years later, so then they never have to deal with these mechanical issues. So what ends up happening is if you buy a used BMW that's like 10 years old or even older than 10 years, you're going to be stuck with a lot of these costs that are not going to add value to your car. They also depreciate in value like extremely quickly, you know. So, if you have a BMW that's like 10 years old, it's not going to be really worth much money at all. It might be worth a few $1,000s. And you might have a mechanical issue that might cost more money to fix than the actual value of the car. So then if you end up paying money to fix the car, say you spend $3,000 to fix the car, but then the car is only worth $3,000, then you're at a loss, because essentially you could just essentially just buy another used car, the same exact one, for $3,000, rather than just spending $3,000 to paying out for labor, to fix your car. And then after you fix the car, another issue more than likely will pop up, and then you're gonna have to shell out even more money to fix that issue. So you just get into this, they call it money pits, where you end up spending all this money trying to maintain an old luxury car. You know, I've had problems, a lot of problems with the 6 Series. Even though I love the car, these problems are not small problems. You're talking about thousands of dollars to fix these problems. And another thing is, I live in Chicago, and they have like strict emissions testing guidelines. And a lot of these cars with the big engines, V8s and bigger, V10s, they're going to have a really hard time passing the emissions standards. So the 6 Series, a lot of them have V8s, and if not all of them have V8s, and then the 7 Series pretty much uses the same engines as the 6 Series. So it's a problem with the 6 Series and the 7 Series, where you will more than likely have problems with emissions, passing emissions as the car starts to age. The car is fine when you buy it brand new. It passes the emissions just fine because it's brand new. Because any car that you buy that's under 5 years old, you don't even have to take it to emissions. You only have to take it to emissions after the 5 years. So it's almost like these German car makers know that you're good for 5 years. You don't even have to take it to emissions, so there's no problems. So lease the car for 5 years, and then release a newer version when the 5 years is up, so then you never have to worry about emissions. So what ends up happening is the people who buy these used cars that are like 10 years old, they end up having to deal with the emissions issues. And then the emissions light comes on, the check engine light, and your car will not pass emissions unless that light is off. But nowadays, they don't even test your car through driving it or having it run. They simply just test the car by plugging in a machine to the computer of the car. And if the computer is saying that you have a check engine or emissions problem, then you just won't pass. And if you don't pass admissions, then you can't re-register the car and you can't drive the car legally. So then they won't allow you to update your registration, and then you just cannot drive the car legally. So then you're in a huge problem. You have to fix it or find some way to pass admissions, in order to drive that car legally. So you're in a very tough bind. So the BMW might look great. It might have the body might be flawless. You might have rims on it, and the interior is great. But if there's something wrong with the engine where the check engine light comes on, and you can't pass admissions, you got a huge problem right there. Then you might not be able to even legally drive the car. And then you could take it to the dealer and be like, well, how much is it going to cost to fix this car? And then they could literally tell you that it's gonna cost $15,000 to fix this engine, or $20,000 to fix this car, or they might even tell you that they need to replace the entire engine. So these are some of the problems that come with the BMWs, and the 6 Series and even the 7 Series, because they use the same engine, these V8 engines. And I could imagine that these could be some problems with the Mercedes as well, but I never owned a Mercedes, so I can't really say much about it. But I could say that for the BMWs, based on owning one, and also based on researching it online. So that's one of the huge problems. But there may be some states out there where you don't have to take it to emissions testing. And if you don't have to take it to emissions testing, then you can own a BMW just fine, a 6 Series, 7 Series, and not have to worry about the check engine light. Because then you could just drive the car, everything's fine, everything works fine, the car drives great. It's just that it's emitting, you know, pollution to the air, but you're still driving it just fine, and you don't got to worry about the emissions testing. So if you live in one of those states, then getting a 6 Series, a 7 Series, it doesn't matter, because even though the check engine light is on, you're still good to go. But when you live in a state like Chicago, and they have such strict standards, it's going to be a really tough issue owning a car that has issues with the engine, with the emissions and check engine light and things like that. And these problems will go for the 6 Series, the 7 Series, and the M Series, because these are all the high performance engines. And these high performance engines are pretty much guaranteed, or more very likely to give you emissions problems, because you're talking about a high performance car, a lot of horsepower, and as these engines get older, they just become less efficient, and then they start emitting more pollution. They call it a lot of carbon buildup in the engine, and then it emits, a lot of harmful smog into the air or whatever, and then that is the issue at hand. But when it comes to cars like the 3 Series, they got smaller engines. They got like V6, and even some of the new BMWs I've heard has 4 cylinders. Those cars are more reliable because they're not really going to give you that many emissions problems and check engine light problems, because it's a smaller engine. And another thing is, because so many people own the 3 Series, it kind of puts pressure in BMW to make very high quality 3 Series models, so then they keep a good reputation for themselves, and there's less people complaining. Because if 90% of the population owns 3 Series vehicles, and they enjoy the vehicles and they're not having any mechanical issues, then they're going to have a good reputation. And so the 3 Series are just better built to last. The 6 Series and the 7 Series are for people that are very wealthy and rich, and these wealthy and rich people, they typically will not own a car for longer than 5 years. When the problems start arising, they already got rid of the car. So they're not going to be complaining, because they're going to buy a new car anyway. And they're not going to have issues with the new car, because it's going to last over 5 years, maybe close to 8 years, without giving them any issues. And then they're going to sell the car and then buy another new car, so they don't complain. So the people that are left complaining are the people that buy these 6 Series and 7 Series. They buy them used, and then they're stuck with the problems. And then they can't afford to fix the problems because they don't have that type of money. And then these are the only people that are complaining. But this is this is a small segment of the population, because most of the people that own BMWs either own a 3 Series, or they're wealthy and they own the 6 and the 7 Series that are brand new. And then there's those few, when the rich people let go, sell the 6 Series and the 7 Series, then it's the people that, that aren't so rich that get stuck with all these problems. So as far as my experiences and what I've seen, the 3 Series are reliable. And That's why Toyota doesn't really have that many problems with emissions at all. They always pass emissions for all the time, from what I've seen. Um, and Honda as well. Honda Accord is known to be one of the most reliable. Honda Civics are known to be one of the most reliable. Toyota, Camry, Toyota Corolla. These are like really reliable cars, but you notice the reason why they're so reliable is because their engines are smaller. Um, Most of them have 4-cylinder engines or 6-cylinder engines. And the 4-cylinder engines and 6-cylinder engines will not really give you problems with emissions because they don't have that much horsepower. And because they use a smaller engine, it just less problems with emissions, less check engine light issues. So the BMW 3 Series it's in the same type of market or the same type of engine build compared to a Corolla, Toyota Camry, and the Honda Civic, Honda Accord. Okay, so that's pretty much what's going on. You know, is these smaller engines are just more reliable. These big engines, these V8s and V10s, it's not that the engines are built bad. I mean, the engines are built to last. I have confidence I have confidence in believing that these V8 engines could last well over 200,000 miles, no problem. But lasting for over 100,000 miles without having to check engine light, now that's a different story. I think that these engines will last, but will emit more emissions. And the problem is you get put in a situation where you're spending thousands of dollars just to get the check engine light to turn off. And just a lot of people don't have the money to do that. Or if they did have the money, they wouldn't even deal with it. They'll just sell the car and buy a newer car that they don't have to worry about those type of check engine light issues. Okay, so I own the 6 Series. I loved it, but I had a lot of problems with it. And then I went shopping around to find another car, and I liked the 6 Series so much that I started to look at other 6 Series, and I noticed that they had the same issues that I had as well, if not worse. So it pretty much made me lose confidence in the BMW 6 Series as far as buying a used one is concerned. I mean, if you have the money to buy a new one, then great. But most people in this world do not have that type of money to drop like $100,000 on a brand new BMW 6 Series. So, like, if you buy a used one, you gotta be prepared, to deal with these types of issues, And I've heard that the same engine they use for the 6 is the same engine they use for the 7 Series. So be well aware of the 7 Series as well. 6 Series, 7 Series. And those are pretty much the funnest cars to drive. And also the M Series. Those will have issues because it's even a more high performance engine than the 6 and the 7 Series because these are even more horsepower. Okay. Other things that you got to realize is that these cars are built in Germany, and in Germany they don't really have speed limits, so they could go as fast as they want. So in Chicago, most places you go, you can't even go over 30 miles per hour. So if you're talking about a car that's designed to go 150 miles an hour or faster, and you bring it into a state where you can't even go over 30 miles per hour, it's just not really, these cars are not really built to be driven in Chicago. So there's going to be those types of issues, and you're going to have to pay for it, in the long run. So, I really like the BMW. I love the way it drives, but I've lost confidence in the 6 Series and its reliability, and even the 7 Series. The 3 Series it's a great car, but it's really not as sporty as I would like it to be. I'm more into the sporty, luxurious combination, and the 6 Series is just a perfect car, other than the issues of which I specified. So that's my feedback on the BMW, my BMW experience, and what I recommend. Um, and right now, there's other brands that I look into. It's hard to find any brand that's comparable to BMW. Like I said, I test drove a few Mercedes. I didn't like it, but I'm sure that there's some really high quality Mercedes out there that are more sporty that I might have liked, but maybe just not within my price range. But I am very worried, and concerned that the same issues would happen with the Mercedes just as the BMW. But currently, the car that I do recommend, of which I've test drove and I really like, is the Jaguar. So that's my new brand that I really like, is the Jaguar brand, and hopefully I won't have the same type of issues. But that's the brand that I promote at the moment. I do promote BMW, but it's the 3 Series that I promote. The M Series, even though that I would love to have an M Series, even though I'd love to have the 6 Series, I really have lost confidence in their ability to to provide like reliability, in that in the development of their engines, to, and like I said, when you take it to a shop, you're paying for that labor. Like literally something that a normal car, regular car, would cost $500 to fix. You're talking about a BMW that will cost $1,500 to fix, just because of the way that they build the engine. They build it so so complex that it literally will take you 10 hours to get to this one part, to change this one part. But then in a regular car like a Honda, it might take you an hour. So you're paying like $150 an hour for a mechanic to take 10 hours to get to a certain part just to change something. And then the bill just keeps accumulating to the point where you end up paying more money for a mechanic's labor than the car is even worth. So if you're a mechanic yourself and you know what you're doing, then it might be a good investment for you to have this type of used luxury car, because you could fix the problems yourself. But if you don't know anything about cars and you're paying out of pocket for these mechanics to try to fix your car, a lot of times you might end up paying more money for their labor than the car is actually worth. And the car might look great on the outside, but if you can't even pass the admissions to be legally enabled to drive the car, then there's no point of how great the car looks. So that's something to be well aware of if you choose to buy a used luxury car. But like I said, once you start driving these luxury cars, it's really hard to turn back to the regular cars, because the regular cars, they're just not fun to drive. Like a Toyota and a Honda, I mean, they're just not fun to drive. They just get you from one point to another point, but you're not enjoying the experience. The whole point of these luxury cars is to make the experience very enjoyable. But you have to, but it is essentially you're paying the price for that, and that's my experience with the BMWs. You know, um, Hopefully with Jaguar, um, I'd have a better experience, and then but so far, everything's going good with the Jaguar, and that's the car that I really like and promote. The BMW 3 Series is something that I do promote as well. It's, instead of buying like a Toyota or a Honda, like Honda Accord or a Honda Civic or a Toyota Camry or a Toyota Corolla, I think the BMW 3 Series would be a really good option, because it's reliable, and it's from a luxury brand, and it just drives great, you know. Um, but yeah, that's what I gotta say about that. You know, hopefully gives the people an idea about BMW and what they want out of a car, um, and things like that. But German cars, BMW, Mercedes, and you also got to pay attention to this. Volkswagen is from Germany as well, and they recently got caught with the emissions scandal, putting special software in their cars to bypass the emissions testing, and they're paying out billions of dollars to settle the lawsuit. So that's a German company, and Volkswagen also makes engines for Audi, and then Audi has also been lumped into that scandal as well. That they put some programs in their cars too. So Volkswagen, Audi, BMW, and Mercedes are all from Germany, and I think the only difference with the BMW is that they don't have any software in their car to bypass the emissions. It just won't pass, and then you are stuck in a position where you have to get rid of that car or pay thousands of dollars to attempt to fix the car in order to pass emissions. And this is a common problem in these German cars that I see. Because not only did I experience this problem with the BMW, but then Volkswagen did that scandalous thing with the software, and then now Audi is connected to that as well. So this is not looking good for the German cars, with these emissions problems. The Japanese cars, though, really don't have those types of problems. From Toyota to Lexus to Acura to Honda, like, I don't see those problems. And you see those cars all over the streets because they pass emissions no problem. So I live in Chicago, and emission standards are very strict. If you live in another state where they don't care about the emissions and they don't test you, then you probably might see a lot of German cars in those states because they don't need to worry about emissions. So if you're in the market to buy a car, really put this in consideration. Like what state you live in and how often you gotta, you know, um, test for emissions, or even if you even have to test, and that could put you in a position to make a better purchasing decision. But that's what I gotta say about that.